The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferens.
Labor unions have been under the microscope in the state of Minnesota. Meanwhile, unionized Xbox employees protesting a visit in Maryland by the company's CEO. And today on the show, the sheet metal workers on wellness and mental health. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 18th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. Wellness and mental health. We've done a lot. You're going to hear a whole lot more about those two subjects right here on America's Workforce. So prevalent, especially in the trades where mental health and suicide, my gosh, is 3 to 4 times the general population. And joining us as our featured guest today, actually, we have 2 individuals. Chris Carlough, no stranger to the show. In fact, we had him on not too long ago. 2 years ago, Chris was appointed to the first ever SMART, that's a sheet metal workers union, SMART Director of Wellness and Mental Health Support. He is going to be joined by Ben Cort. Now, Ben is the CEO of Union EAP. That's Union Employee Assistance Program. And their website is, it's real simple, unioneap.com. The SMART Union, smart.org. But the one you're going to want to go to is SMOHIT.org. A lot of information there about mental health, suicide prevention, resources there. And you'll hear that website several times right here on America's Workforce. I got to read to you a quote from Chris. I strongly believe that empathy and vulnerability through shared experiences can reduce the stigma of mental health issues and will build a culture of support, caring, and solidarity throughout our organization where members and their families feel safe seeking help for mental health issues without fear of judgment or reprisal. Boy, that says it all. Really says it all. So this is going to be a good conversation on what Chris and Ben are doing to help members with wellness and mental health support. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. Newly released government documents show that the Department of Homeland Security launched a widespread undercover surveillance operation against Minnesota's labor unions and other progressive organizations earlier this year. Disclosed as part of an ongoing federal lawsuit against 15 protesters accused of interfering with the Minnesota ice surge, the documents detail operations Puppet Master and Whipple Shield. These operations involve federal agents infiltrating meetings, group chats, and public gatherings associated with Direct Action Minnesota, a broad coalition of organizations that included the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees, the Minneapolis Association of Educators, Local 59, the Minnesota AFL-CIO, SEIU Local 26, and other workers' rights groups. As one of the defendants' motion for discovery observes, the majority of the government's surveillance focused on preparation for conduct, which was actually protected by the First Amendment. On top of that, the government used administrative subpoenas to obtain years of financial records from the Communication Workers of America and the Service Employees International Union to supposedly investigate domestic terrorist financing. The motion asked the court to compel the government to release all reports related to surveillance of Minnesota unions, nonprofit organizations, protesters, as well as activists. Last week, employees at Xbox, all members of a union in Maryland, protested a visit from the company's CEO, Asha Sharma. Members of Bethesda Game Studios Union, which is affiliated with the CWA, planted 800 red flags outside the office to represent the number of workers laid off this year so far. Workers also brought out an inflatable Scabby the Rat and hung up posters and balloons in their offices. Now, last month, in July, Sharma confirmed plans to eliminate 3,200 jobs across Microsoft's video game division, marking the 5th round of mass layoffs at Xbox in 3 years. CWA Canada President Carmel Smith has accused Microsoft of illegally firing workers without advanced communication with individuals or their representatives. And today, August 18th, workers are hosting a coordinated Save Our Devs rally in at least 9 offices across the U.S. and Canada to fight for stronger protections against the layoffs. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about worker wellness and mental health with the Sheet Metal Workers Union, along with an employee assistance program, all part of America's Workforce. Back in a few minutes. Don't go away.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LiUNA to power North America with affordable energy. The men and women of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, have the skills needed to build and maintain oil, natural gas, nuclear, solar, and wind projects that are shaping America's energy future. From new energy tech to retrofitted facilities, LiUNA members do it all. Find out what it takes to be powered by LiUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org.
America's Workforce appreciates our sponsor, the Columbus Central Ohio Building and Construction Trades Council, who represents more than 18,000 workers from 19 affiliated local unions and district councils.
America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. The Iron Workers Great Lakes District Council, consisting of 8 iron worker local unions in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. We build the skylines and bridges along the Great Lakes. With more work than ever before, the Great Lakes District Council is actively searching out the next great iron worker, whether it's building the next Intel plant or constructing a bridge to safely connect our great cities along the lake. So join the Iron Workers Great Lakes District Council today. Find out how and learn more about the council by visiting iwdistrictcouncil.com.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. Talking about wellness, mental health support, big issue here on America's Workforce, and we're going to take a look at how this all evolved. This is part of our segment we call Labor 132. This Labor Day, 132 years old. That's right. President Grover Cleveland signed Labor Day into law. It became a national holiday in 1894. Chris Carlough is one of our guests today. We have 2 gentlemen, Chris and Ben Cort, and we're going to talk about a little bit about the history of what has happened here in the trades, making sure that members get all the support they need. Okay, it's important. You want to be safe on the job. You got to be mentally safe on the job as well. Chris, I'm going to start off with you, and I want to tell you, your name came up a couple of times. We had Bill McCanley on the show from the the UA. Boy, I tell you, I love talking to that guy. He's a pistol on the air. We have to be very careful. We have to edit out a few things because he can get a little rough on his language there. But anyway, your name came up, and I remember you and I had a conversation some time ago, and it's important that we keep this conversation going. And we will, I promise you, we will here on America's Workforce. A little background on yourself, and then we're going to go over to Ben, who's joining us on the podcast today. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of my background. I'm a lifer in the labor movement. I've been a union member for about 43 years. I've worked for about 40 or so in some kind of capacity with the trade union movement with the Sheet Metal Workers Union. An organizer for 20 years, and then the education director for about 16. And for the last 3 years or so, I've been doing nothing but mental health for our international union brothers and sisters.
And how's that been going for you so far?
Man, it's been, and I'm going to try and keep it PG for you. You know, I know Bill lets it fly a little bit. I'll kind of like try to reel that in, but you know, I mean, we're construction workers. Sometimes we got to speak straight. I'll tell you, probably about 15 years ago, a little less than 15 years ago, we were inserting mental health education into some of our training for our business reps and appointed people. So we would put in a little bit around anxiety and substance use disorder, things like that. And an overall, how do we go about helping our members and their families that are going through crisis as part of a larger advanced business reps training. And whenever we did a little thing, people came back and said we need to do more, and it just evolved over the years, and to a place now where we're probably touching in our education and training 1,000 of our rank and file, full time, and elected and appointed people in our union every year. And so we have a whole set of peer trainings and mental health trainings. We go into local unions. We even go into local companies and shops and do education and training around everything from anxiety and depression to how to utilize naloxone, which is a overdose reversing drug for opiate overdoses, things like that. So we've been doing a lot of this education and training for many, many years. It was that about 10 years ago is when I met Ben Cort, and I had him as one of my subject matter experts to come in and do some education and training for us. So, I mean, it's going great. I think the education side, we do really well. But then it's about resources. And this is where we kind of got stuck a few years ago. But I will say this. If our focus is on training peers, reducing stigma, and getting people to resources, well, you certainly have to have resources to get them to. And EAPs, employee assistance programs generally, that were taking up that spot, were doing so in a very ineffective way. And so we did a whole evaluation process that lasted a few years. And we went local by local and EAP by EAP, and really gave us a good idea as to where they were falling short. This helped us get Ben Cort involved, who had been in mental health for most of his adult life, I would say. I mean, look at him. He's still a young guy. What am I kidding? Look at him. He's a young guy, man. But he got into it early. And we went to him. We said, look, man, we got a big problem because all of our people, our ears are perked up. We're leaning in. We recognize the problems around everything: substance use, suicide, and suicide prevention. All of the things that are important. But we're handing them off to a substandard mental health resource, and you got to go start one. And that's basically how the conversation started. We don't need an EAP that can offer up dog walking and identity theft protection. Sure, we might need that in some way, but where are we hitting most of the problem? And that is around mental health issues. And it's not just substances. We have some of the highest rates of mental illness of any industry, along with substance use, along with suicide, along with anxiety and depression. So it's all of those things. So it would be nice to have one number where we could have people call that felt like they trusted the place, they wanted to use it, and those people had our members and their families' backs. And that's why I asked Ben to come on with this too.
So Ben, you're the resource guy, okay? Well, we want to talk to you about those resources, and I guess this conversation started with Chris. He said about 10 years ago. maybe you can tell us how that all got together and explain a little bit more about your background. Union EAP, that's the name of the company then, right?
It is, yeah. It's an employee assistance program specifically for organized labor with a real emphasis on skilled labor. So about a decade ago, I was given a talk at an event called LAP. And if your listeners aren't familiar with it, they're interested in this. It's an interesting one. It's called Labor Assistance Professionals. And once a year, a lot of the folks in the trade who have always tried to help out. It's an old organization, almost totally non-professional. It's just members helping members. They get together, have a big conference, and I gave a talk at it. And at the end, Chris came up and asked me if I would help him with some of the education efforts that he had. And my background has been in mental health and substance abuse. I'm somebody in recovery myself. I've spent most of my career inside of public health and some of it in private. So I was really, really excited about getting a chance to work with labor to educate this blue collar world more on what was out there for us. As somebody who, one, has suffered from addiction, I've been sober several years now at this point, 30 actually. I got sober when I was 18. And someone who's also struggled a lot with mental health. My own fight with depression and PTSD has been a big one. I just loved the idea of being able to help Chris package stuff in a way that our frontline brothers and sisters could hear. So we spent a long time doing that, and then that led to what Chris said, realizing that we were directing people towards resources that really didn't exist. We were like, all you got to do is pick up the phone and make this call. And then when Chris and I started auditing them and picking up the phones and making those calls, we were like, well, okay, something here's pretty fundamentally broken.
Yeah. We actually had one of our employee assistance programs, which I won't mention the name of, as we were calling on behalf of one of our members that had a very complex legal and child abuse piece. It had multiple segments, and that EAP said, we don't do mental health. And,
Whoa.
Oh, really?
yeah,
Like,
right.
where they
Yeah, it's
said it
like,
to
look,
us.
man, what we do is just to negotiate stays at drug and alcohol treatment. We don't do any of that other stuff, even though they market it that they do other things. And so, like, when they get hit with something complex and a little heavy, it's like, whoa, we don't do mental health, like not in that way. So it was it was like, yeah, we got a whole bunch of stories. I'm gonna like ragging on the ones that that weren't making the grade. It's just that it became really evident that we needed to take the matter into our own hands and do something. If we were gonna be able to have to tell our members to call a number, we certainly wanted one that picks up and that stays with that member. And the level of service and concierge type of mental health problem solving is really extraordinary.
Gentlemen, if you don't mind, I want to talk about the resources. I've done many of these shows dealing with mental health and addiction in general, especially among the trades, which is something we have to work on. There are resources out there, and Ben, this is probably a good question for you. Are we connecting with those resources? I mean, or is it overwhelming? Are there too many to sort through? What's the answer to that?
Man, you really nailed it in the second part of that question. Like, there are resources out there, but those resources haven't been packaged in a way that meets the needs of our members. Because are they out there? Yes. Are we getting through to them? Typically, no, because what we're telling people to do is navigate an incredibly complex system. I mean, if you just think about, your listeners think about how tricky it can be to work through your insurance to get in to see your primary care physician alone. Now you add into this psychiatry, psychology, and all the ancillary services that are with it. And then this is happening in a time of crisis, and most often in a time of extreme mental crisis. So you are in, total anguish. I know a lot of your listeners can relate to this. I've been here so many times in my life. Like, you can't have somebody in crisis have to figure out the complexities of this system.
Let me take a quick break here. I got a couple more questions, and I want to talk about the input that you're getting from the Smart Union, the sheet metal air rail, and transit union on this situation? Because I know this is a long time coming. And Chris, you've been just a couple of years, you were appointed first ever SMART Director of Wellness and Mental Health Support. That was a giant leap for SMART. And obviously they saw a problem that needed to be addressed. I want to talk about that. We'll continue with Chris Carlough and Ben Cort talking about the wellness, mental health support in the trades. Big issue that's got to be addressed, and we will continue to address it right here on America's Workforce. Back in a few minutes. Don't go away.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, where you can find more at teamster.org.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Talking about mental health, wellness, and the support you, especially if you're a member of the trades, can get. There's a lot of resources out there, and we have two gentlemen as our featured guests today, starting off with Chris Carlough. Chris is the Director of Wellness and Mental Health Support for the SMART Union. That's a sheet metal workers union. He's Director of Wellness and Mental Health Support, taking the next step in a long career dedicated to enhancing the well-being of members in the sheet metal workers trade all across the U.S. and Canada. Chris, I want to start off with you in this segment. I see this position that you now have, and you've got a long career in the trades, over 4 decades, started in 2024, which was not too long ago. And I'm just wondering, was this a conversation that was going on for several years? They had to realize that there was a problem that needed to be addressed, and it's being addressed now. I like to know how it all came about. You know, I'm sure there was a lot of discussions behind closed doors saying, you know what, we got to do something, and Chris is the guy that's going to help us out on this. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. You know, I think that a lot of times, and maybe not just the construction industry and those of us that work in the union movement, but when an idea comes around and it requires a resource or a person to do it, we just give it to somebody. And then something else comes up and we give it to that person. And before you know it, that person's they're wearing a lot of hats. And I think that's pretty common. And so as education director, we've been talking about mental health for about 14, 15 years or so. And we kind of baked it into some of our education and training. So if we had a new business reps training, we would put some piece around mental health in it. And so it's kind of like, and then I started doing peer trainings as part of the overall trainings that we would do. So we would do leadership and communication, organizing, representation. We do negotiations training. We start doing a mental health training. And so then we started doing 2 and 3 mental health trainings. Then we started doing peer trainings, So I had this job that was one thing, and then it just expanded. And at some point, we had a change in leadership, and the new general president came in and said, "Look, man, we need somebody doing this thing full time. It's that important." And that way you can spend your full time and attention on mental health, and not mental health this week, negotiations next week, kind of a thing.
In your opinion, Chris, are the members engaged in this conversation? I mean, this is a tough conversation. You pointed out too in the first segment. Well, we're dealing with construction workers. This is a tough breed, and and you know what? A lot of times they don't take advice like this. You know that story.
One of the reasons why we have such a hard time in some of the areas that are affecting our members the most in mental health is because we were always taught to rub some dirt on it. Don't complain, suck it up, all of that stuff. But I tell you what's really interesting. We've gotten an opportunity to meet with a lot of our members, our rank and file people. They're working on a job site, or they're working in a shop, and they take 2 days off. They come to a peer training. They actually can get paid to come to that training. So we do try and offset a little bit of the loss that would come with leaving the job site and coming to an 8-hour training for 2 days. And we'll start these trainings off where we will lay down on the floor. We call it a sociometrics exercise, where we have different emotions that are on the floor. And it might be frustrated, or it might be anxious, or it might be happy. There might be 20 cards. And we'll ask everybody to stand up and go to the card, stand on the card of how they felt the night before, knowing they were coming to a mental health training for 2 days. And then we start that conversation, and you'll be really surprised how construction workers can get really vulnerable and empathetic and share stuff, which is so instrumental in trying to reduce stigma. But yeah, man, big tough construction workers are talking about why they're sad, or why they're scared, or why they're anxious. And it's a really important beginning of a conversation that we've needed to have for a long time.
Chris, let me ask you this. How is this affecting your recruits, those entering the apprenticeship program right now? And you said that, you tell them that, what, there's help in case you have a mental health issue. Does that scare them away? I'm just wondering, because you need workers, and I'm just wondering, hey, the wages are good, the benefits are good, but then again, there's a downside to this. What's your answer to that?
And I love that question, man. And this whole idea of young people coming into the trade and looking around going, "Hey, what the hell did I get into?" And I'll tell you this, I think that young people, they come in and they see us talking about these issues, and they're jazzed by it, man. I think that they think that, wow, they care enough to have some of these conversations. That's really thoughtful. That's really supportive. Keep in mind also that one of the demographics that suicide rate has been jumping over the last few years has been 18 to 24-year-olds. So they're very well aware of the mental health issues that are going on. They've been experiencing it. And when it comes to the younger set, they're experiencing things before they have fully developed frontal lobe, kind of a thing. And so, like, reasoning and decision making, things like that, are affected. So there's like a couple of different offshoots to that answer. But I think that young people, when they get into the trade and they start taking a look around, I'm hoping that they're viewing what we're doing as inclusive, and inclusive for everybody.
Let's go back to Ben Cort here. Ben, you mentioned earlier that you're in recovery for what did you say, since you were 18? Did I hear that correctly? Okay.
You did.
I think it's important. Well, let me put it this way. I know it's important, I guess, to have somebody that's in recovery to speak to somebody on about this whole issue here, because you found a way. You found a way to cope, and you're still you're still coping for, what is it now? Was it 3 decades now or something like that?
As of June 15th, yeah, it was 30 years.
Okay, well, congratulations to you on that. How is that beneficial to what you are doing on the job? The fact that you can speak from truth here.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it does matter and it helps because there are some people who will say, hey, if you can't relate to me personally, I don't really have anything to hear from you. I I hear that and I respect it, and I'm glad to jump in the trenches with people anytime, but I counter it a lot of the times too. Man, I have met some people whose both education and just natural empathy make them phenomenal. I mean, Chris, I'm thinking of some folks you and I know, like Dr. Barnes, who's not personally in recovery himself, but is so powerful. Jeremy, same thing with him. I think of Joanna. I think of all these people we know, Sally. You don't have to have firsthand experience to be able to show up for somebody because what it takes is some understanding. You don't really want to go in there cold, without any sort of frame or base knowledge on how to do things. But man, if you walk into it and if you are going into it and with love and respect for the person, it's the same thing with mental health. I don't think you necessarily have to have that experience, but I will tell you that there are doors that get opened with that personal experience that I take advantage of. It's the same thing with mental health. I'm really frank and open about my own mental health struggles, about my own struggles with suicidal ideation and depression. And that's something that I think when we can get honest there, that helps people to really come along too. They like knowing that they're talking to somebody who's felt the same dark.
You walk the walk and you talk the talk. I get it. I get it. Well, I tell you, this is a great conversation, and I can't say this enough. We have to continue talking about this because there's a need out there. There's clearly a need. I want to drive people to 2 websites. Well, the general website for the Sheet Metal Workers Union is smart.org. But Chris, you mentioned to me in the break, it's smohit.org. That's SMOHIT.org. Did I get that correct? And what does that mean?
Well, put me on the spot. I'm terrible with acronyms, even though I'm a DC,
Oh, you nailed it.
Yeah. It's the Sheet Metal Occupational Health Institute Trust. That is our labor management, health and safety fund that operates nationally.
SMOHIT.org. So when I go there, those listening to the show, they can get all the information they need to know about this conversation that we're having.
No, absolutely. And like I mentioned, the SMOHIT side handles a lot of our peer training and a lot of our mental health training. And so our local unions can actually go on that website and sign up to get a peer training into their local union.
Okay, I like that. And Ben, your website is unioneap.com. Again, that's unioneap.com. Did I get that correct? And the resources that we talked about are posted there as well?
You did. We don't have a lot of our resources out there. I mean, we provide a subscription service to locals. And so we've got a ton of resources on there. I think they're behind a wall that you have to be a part of what we do with, but there's a lot of information about what we do and how you can get in touch with us to help out with it. I mean, we built something very specifically for the people who we're talking to right now to try and meet the specific needs that we've seen over looking at this for better than a decade.
The 2 websites are SMOHIT.org or unioneap.com, unioneap.com. All right, gentlemen, great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us here. Chris, any last words before we button it up?
Let me just say this. We have not found a one-call mental health resource like we have in Union EAP. We've got utilization rates that are anywhere from 300 to 1,000% higher than their previous EAP. Our people are using it. Our people are getting better.
Our effort, as a member of myself, my local 9 and my son, third-year apprentice in it, we tried to build something that would truly meet the needs of folks when they're in crisis. And I think we put something together pretty cool with licensed therapists who answer the phone and people who understand the construction world. I will leave with this, like if it's with us that you're going to get help, or if it's just with somebody else, or if you need to talk to somebody, if you need a hand, there are people you can reach out to, and don't stop until you get that help, because there are folks out there. Sometimes you just got to be persistent to find them. And if you haven't, hit us up and we'll see what we can do.
All right, let me button up with the websites again. It's smohit.org and Union EAP.com. And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up tomorrow, the Ohio Federation of Teachers, that and more. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.